Hi, this is Kimberly. I'm going to show you how to make a very easy and quick outlined name snap tab, which seems to be very popular today in Embrilliance. I should preface this by saying that I have Embrilliance Essentials, Embrilliance Enthusiast, and Stitch Artist too. You do need Enthusiast to do the little cheat with the knockdown stitches to get the outline. I don't know which menu items come with which module. I'm sorry, I bought everything except Enthusiast together, so I really don't know. But this is how I do it. So the first thing you want to do is go to New and create yourself a new design. If I have mine already set to the 4x4, I always start any Snaptab design in 4x4 because it's going to be the most common hoop size there is. Some people's machines will only do 4x4. If you go up to this little folder, it's your preferences. If you're not already in the 4x4, you can change it. Of course, the 4x4 relates to the 100 by 100. So you simply just select the other one, click apply, and then OK. We're going to go back to the 4x4. I've also changed it to inches over here to display. It just makes it a little bit easier when I'm trying to guesstimate how much of a tab I need. So I'm already changed that to inches, but this is where you would change it to either millimeter or inches. The first thing I'm going to do is go in and pull down a default shape that's going to form my snap tab. So if you click up here, it brings in the library, and there's lots of shapes. And these shapes are pretty amazing because many of them you can go ahead and change the size and the shape of them all you want. So I go to Shapes 1, and then I like to pull in this rectangle vertical. And you'll see it pulls it in here, and we can already see that that's an inch wide since we're set to an inch module or inch frame here. I like to make them a little bit between 3/4 and an inch, not quite an inch wide because most of the hardware is only 3/4 inch opening. So you can go ahead and change this and narrow it up. That looks good right there. And then rotate it. Usually you're going to want your stamp tab rotated in the frame to fit the most size. When you do it straight on, it just doesn't fit as much. I can already tell this is going to be too wide. I'm not going to take the time to straighten this up for this video, but you can see that there's a little bit of a difference here. It's not totally straight, so you can play with the rotation to get that a little bit more straight if you want. Okay, that was pretty easy, but sometimes it takes a little bit to get that right, so just keep that in mind. We don't really want our our tab to be not nice and neat. Going to go ahead and move this out of the way, and I'm still kind of suffering through trying to remember when I can move a design and I can't, and right now it's not letting me. There we go. I can tell already this is going to be a little small. Usually you want it to fill this whole quadrant, so I'm going to go ahead and stretch this out and make it a little bit bigger. And you can play around with this as you want. The best thing is to actually just create a template. I actually have the one by Designs by Little Bee, but it's easier just to do this myself than to pull in that template all the time. But once you get it created in Stitch Artist, you probably could just save it. I don't. Right now, this is just an object. There's no properties to it. So we have to assign some type of property, either a satin stitch, a running stitch, or something to that. The way we do that is we go up here to Create, which is the Stitch Artist module, and you select this option here. See how the stitches? I just do the running stitch. Now, this already pulled in the last one that I used, which was bean. We do not want this to be bean. This is going to be our placement stitch, so we just want a single stitch. You can leave the length default, or you can make it a little bigger if you want, so it goes a little faster, because again, this is just our placement stitch. This button is to show you the tie-ons. This is tying an entry and exit. That's not necessary. We don't need that for the placement stitch, so I'm going to remove that. Again, it's pulling in that from the last time I used this particular option, which was a bean stitch. Okay, there we go. And we don't care about the color. I do like to make the colors different for the placement and the bean stitch, so that it forces the machine to stop and allows you to have time to add your backing. But otherwise, we're just going to leave this with the default. So there we go. So we have our Snap tab outline. Now we're going to do a name. So there's two options here. There's all the built-in fonts that come with Embrilliance, plus those that you've installed, any BX fonts. I don't have a lot of them in here yet, but I've imported quite a few. So you can either use that, or, and this is the undo button up here, you can actually go back to create. You can click this button, which is True Type, and it's going to bring up any True Type font that's on your machine. And it's kind of fun. There's lots of different ones you can do. For this case, we're going to go ahead and stick with the built-in fonts. So I'm going to go up here and select. I'm going to put my name in here and hit set. And then I'm going to select a font. I like this one here, so I'm going to pick this one. Now I can see already. Let's go ahead and shrink down the screen a little bit so it all fits in there. It's a very long name. And with the BX fonts, there is a limit to how much you can change the size of them. So if we rotate this, and we try and pull it over here, we can already see it's going to be too long. I'm not going to be able to use my name like that. There's probably ways around it, but just to make this tutorial simple, I'm just going to change it. I'm not going to use my middle name. There we go. Now let's move this over here. And we can see we're still going to be a little bit short on space. Let's rotate this a little bit more. Oops. Rotate it so that, see how the line here, we want that to be parallel with the D, so we know it's going to stitch out right. So it's a little bit big, but we can work with it. One of the fun things about the BX fonts, if you notice all these little squares in here, I'm sure there's a name for them. I don't know what it is yet. But if you were to select those, you can actually kind of play around and move some of these fonts around. And so we can actually create a kind of a fun little layout here. Let's go over here to the middle one and see, let's move the W around a little. And let's go and move the N around. And actually, let's go ahead and select this W again. Let's rotate that W a little bit. And let's see, let's move the N down here. There we go, that's a little better. And if we move the W up, and then we move the N down, suddenly we can fit it in now. And that's kind of a fun, funky way to show the name. So you have a little bit of options there. So now we have the name, we have the tab. Now we want to do the outline. So the way we do that, and this option is with Enthusiast, you have to have Enthusiast, is if you go up here to Utility, add Knockdown Stitching, and you're going to see it gives us a knockdown stitching here. Well, obviously we don't want to do this knockdown stitching in our Snaptab. We just want the outline. But if you go over here to Underlay, got to go to Create, bring up Stitch Artist first, select Underlay. You can go over here, see how it's got the fill selected, change that to running stitch. And suddenly you see all the little nodes it created. Suddenly we have a running stitch. If we go over here to the stitch simulator and we can test the stitch out on it, there we go. We have our test stitch. One thing to make note of, I'm going to go ahead and undo this so I can show you something that can happen. I'm going to go ahead and pull this one a little bit farther away. And you'll see whenever there's a center, that's your moving option, and see how it changes to a hand. Let's move this a little bit farther away. Now let's do the same thing and go to Utility, add Knockdown Stitching. And you see how there's a gap in there now. And we don't want that gap in there. So if we go to the thing, or I'm sorry, Stitch Simulator, there's probably other ways to see it, but this is the way I know how to do it. There's a gap in there. The other thing you could have is you might have a break there, not a gap, but just extra stitching. We don't want that. So I show you that because it's important. We're going to undo this. Let's go back. It's important that we have this close enough that there's not going to be any spacing. So you can actually get it really close. We had it originally. You can change these and pull these little nodes even closer if you want. all the way up to that D. And this is actually probably not quite wide enough on the tab, so I'm actually going to take this and adjust it right now. This is showing your start and your end. That's what those little red and green triangles are. It's the start and the end. I'm going to move that out of here so I can get to that node and straighten him up. I don't know why I'm not being able to select him. There we go. Okay, that's too advanced. Let me just back up. It's not important for this lesson to know that, so we're just going to leave it the way it was. Let's get it a little closer so it fits in the frame. Okay, so we're back to where we were. I just wanted to show that little difference to you because it's important that these objects are close enough together so that it sees it as one object when you are doing the knockdown stitch. There are other ways to do that to merge the objects, but that's more advanced. This is just a very simple way to do it. So we're going to go back to add knockdown stitching. Here we go. We see our little nodules. Let's go back over here, select the outline, make sure this is all set the way we already discussed. And if you go to Stitch Simulator, you can see how it's going to stitch out. Perfect. Now, as you'll notice, let's go back over to Create and go back into Stitch Artist. We still have this box in here. We don't really need that box anymore because the outline stitch is already going to create that tab. So you can just click Delete on your keyboard and get rid of that. Now we have our placement line. We have our name that we're going to stitch out. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make a copy of that placement line. And you can do Command-C on a Mac or Control-C on Windows. And then Command-V or Control-V to make a copy of it. So you don't get confused. I like to change the name of these. And this won't show in the pattern, but it'll show for you when you're doing your stitching. And it just makes it easier. So this is the final bean. So now for the final bean, we actually want it to be a bean stitch. And it doesn't have to be a bean stitch. Look at all these different options you have. The back stitch is actually kind of fun. Oh, and my Embrilliance just crashed on me. I am so sorry about that. Let me get Embrilliance back open here. And that happens sometimes. So sorry about that. All right. Auto recover. Hopefully it recovered. There we go. This is reality, my friends. Embrilliance crashes on me quite a bit for no apparent reason. All right. Unfortunately, auto created one of my prior ones. Okay, that's not good. Let's close that. All right, here we go. Let's start all over here. Let's get this guy a little closer. All right. Let's get him a little closer. I'm sorry, I had to go back and do a few more stitches here. All right, should be good. Utility, add knockdown stitching. Change it to a running stitch. There we go. Gonna get rid of this guy here. Gonna make a copy of him. Let's change him, the name. Final bean. Placement. All right, go back to final bean. We're going to change that to bean in this case. Let's not mess with it. We want to do the tie entry and tie exit. And you'll see that the start and end is down here. We don't want the start and end. If you don't already know this, this is the start and end, what I started to show you earlier. We don't want that all the way down here at the bottom of our stitch. So let's take this back up and move it over to the tab. I like to bury them in the tab so that the stitches get hidden in the when you fold it down. And it's much nicer way to do it. You can actually put them right on top of each other, but I find that also tends to be a little bit messy. Again, I'm still really new to this application, so there may be other ways to do this that I don't know yet. And now if we go into the simulator, and we can go ahead and stitch it out. There's our placement. There's our name. Skip the head here and move all the way down here. You can just drag this here. All right. And actually, if you just hold this down, it'll go stitch by stitch. If you hold it down, it'll show you here. So it's finishing that. And now you'll see it's doing the bean. And you see how it's bouncing back and forth. That's showing you how it's doing the bean stitch. And voila, there you go. You have a final outline. Now, if you notice here, let me shrink this down a little. We somehow got a little too large when we did this somehow. So if you just do a Control or Command A, you can just shrink all those down together a little bit to fit in here. There's actually an option as well to fit it into the screen, into the hoop. So it's all selected. Make sure Control A. This little button right here will center it in the hoop. Well, it did not do a very good job that time. Okay. Usually it centers in the hoop. There we go. Now it's all fit. So the last thing that you need to do is go to File and Save. You can do this Save As, and it'll save both your default stitch version and your BE file, which is your Embrilliance. So SFD is what I'm prefixing my files for Starfish Designs, Dawn, Snaptab. And there you go. It saves it as a PEZ or whatever format you want, and you can send it to your machine. I hope this has helped you. Quick and easy way to create these name outlines using Embrilliance, Stitch Artist, and Enthusiast. I believe you probably can do all of this with Enthusiast and Essentials. Don't quote me on that. Hope this has been helpful. Thank you.